Okay, so performance profiling. So this is a process where we sit down with our athlete or our group of athletes and we put the athlete at the center of profiling their own performance in terms of what are the physical, the psychological, and the technical slash tactical capacities that they feel are most important for their sport, where they feel they need to improve on most, and it allows us to prioritize these attributes with the athletes based off the athletes being in control of the process. And it's a nod in the hat to the self-determination theory of motivation, where the athlete has the autonomy of control, the autonomy of actions. And in addition, it definitely is in line with my coaching philosophy, which is having a strong athlete-coach relationship, empowering the athlete to be at the center of the decision-making process for their own performance. And it's a process that I have used and it works really, really well. It can be done individually or in the group setting. And again, as I've already said, it's where we put the athlete at the center of this whole experience, okay? So throughout this presentation, which is going to be short because I'm going to go through this quite quickly, it's done in a step process, okay? I want you to remember that I'm going to hypothetically speak here. So I'm going to use a GAA Gaelic footballer as an athlete that I'm working with, okay? So what we do is we sit down with the athlete, we get a pen and a piece of paper, okay? Again, as I said, this can be done with one athlete or multiple athletes. When we sit down with a pen and piece of paper, we ask the athlete to identify the attributes that they feel is important for their sports. And what we do is we break it into three areas: the physical skills, sport-specific skills, and the psychological skills. And we're going to ask them to pick anywhere between 8 and 16 attributes for each one of these areas. So for the physical skills, we're speaking about physical capacities that are possessed by the top athletes in their sport, okay? So they may come back with strength, speed, agility, flexibility, and so forth. Write them down in box 1. Then in box 2, we ask them about sport-specific skills, the technical and the tactical skills that are used within the game. And again, they're going to come back with a list of anywhere between 8 and 16 of those skills. It could be tackling, using both feet, catching, and so forth. Then we speak about the psychological skills. So these are the mental capacities that they believe reflect the mindset of a top athlete. So again, they're going to come back with a list of between 8 and 16, and it could be confidence, focus, positive self-talk, and so forth. Now, it's important that once they make this list, that we try to keep an even number among all of the groups and the areas, okay? So once that list is made, we move on to step 2. And step 2 was where we ask the athlete to pick 4 of the attributes that they feel are most important to their growth as an athlete, okay? So you want to pick 4 of each because we want to make sure that we're keeping this even, okay? So that's going to give them a 12. So they pick 4 from the physical, 4 from the sport-specific, technical and tactical, and 4 from the psychological. And now they have their 12 chosen attributes, okay? Now, it's important that we realize that this isn't a process of highlighting what the athlete feels they're good or bad at. It's a process of highlighting what they feel is important, okay? Then step 3 is where we create clarity by creating a definition, okay? So we're going to ask them to define each attribute, okay, and what it means to them. So for example, if they were to pick confidence from one of the psychological attributes, you say, okay, so confidence. Now, what does confidence mean to you? So the athlete may come back with, okay, having a strong belief in my ability to perform. That's fine. You ask them to write that down. It's really important that they take ownership of this process, all right? So it's just creating a clearer narrative, all right? So then we ask them to come up with the contrast attribute to confidence. So what is the opposite of confidence? And they may say self-doubt. And again, you ask them to write that down and you ask them to define self-doubt. So when they define self-doubt, they may say having a lack of belief in my ability as a player. So now what we've done is we've created a continuum. So at one end of the continuum, we have confidence. And at the other end of the continuum, you have self-doubt. We have a definition for both, and it allows the athlete to create an image in their head of where they may sit along this continuum. And you're going to see why this is important in the next couple of slides. So now step 4 is we ask them to rank the importance of each attribute, okay? So we're going to say, right, out of 1 to 10, how important do you feel confidence is? So if they think it's very important, they're going to say 9 or 10 out of 10. If they don't see it as being important, they may pick a 1 or a 2 out of 10. But it's like a Borg scale of RPE. Very similar. They're going to rank it in terms of importance, and they're going to do that for each one of the 12 attributes. Step 5 is where they give themselves a self-now score. Now I want you to note that this self-now score is out of 7. So we'll stick with confidence. So where do you feel you rank out of a 1 to 7 in terms of your confidence now? So if it's very poor, it's a 1. If it's very good, it's a 7. So now we've created this visual, and the athlete can look down at the continuum and they might say, all right, I'm about halfway, you know. So they might say, I'm about a 4 out of 7. So that's fine. That's where they feel they are now. And they put 4 into the next section and the box that I've laid out below. So we have our attribute, we have our contrast attribute, we have the importance of the attribute, and they have their self-now score, okay? And again, the athlete is dictating all of this, okay? That's the most important part. So step 6 is what they're going to see as being their ideal self score. So your ideal self represents the level that they can achieve realistically if they fully apply themselves in the sport. So again, this is out of 7. So if you fully applied yourself, if you journaled, if you used anchors and triggers and put a lot of work in, where do you feel you could be? And an athlete might say, okay, well, I feel that, you know, my ideal self, if I put the work in, I can get to a 7. We say that's fine. It's the next column that we add. So your self-now score is 4. Your ideal self is 7. And then we get to step 5, which is the final process. And this is where we do a little bit of calculation. All right. So this is difference times importance. So now you'll see that we have difference in the next column. So we have our self, okay, now, which is 4. Your ideal self is 7. So what is the difference? The difference is 3, okay? What was the importance that we ranked on the attribute? A 9. So your distance time importance score is 27. Okay, so I'll go through that again. Your self-now score and your ideal self, what's the difference between them? Is 3. Now the athlete has said that they feel that this attribute is a 9 out of 10 in terms of importance. So the difference times importance is now 27. And we do this for each one of our attributes. Okay, so we have our 12 attributes. We establish our difference times importance for each one of the attributes. And our top 3 areas are our areas that are going to become our priority areas. So we do this for the full 12 attributes, all right? And our top 3 areas become our priority areas, okay? And this determines what we're going to put our focus in for the next block of work or for the season ahead or whatever, you know what I mean? However, that sits within the context of the conversation, okay? So again, it might happen that all 3 areas might be all psychological areas. And then there is a gaping gap in the athlete's perceived ability, or maybe it might be their objective ability or within that area. So now it's, you know, giving an athlete a solid foundation for which they can say, okay, all right, look, this is definitely what I feel is my weakest area and where I need to put my focus in. So this is how I have profiled myself in terms of my performance. So it's a really simple process. It can be done in a group environment. You sit down with your players, you set aside 60 minutes, 70 minutes, you give them a biro on a piece of paper, you go through this whole process with your 12 attributes, you have your difference times importance, you get your scores, your top 3 are your priority areas. It's a really useful tool. And again, as I've said 3 to 4 times throughout this presentation, we're empowering the athlete because we're putting the athlete back into the center of the decision-making process.